Hey everyone, this is Don Mike Mendoza, your host for Producing While Asian. Today's episode features Tyler Pong, an AAPI filmmaker and producer who lives in Los Angeles. And today he's here to talk about his experiences with the Asian American Film Lab, as well as his own experiences with his own production company called Kill the Pig Productions. So we hope you enjoy today's conversation, and welcome to Producing While Asian.
If you loved her so much, then why did you cheat on her all the time?
I always came back to her.
Yeah, and every time she couldn't find you because you were out fucking around, she would come to me. Worried about you. She knew what was going on, but she didn't want to believe it.
And that's when you stabbed me in the back.
No. Just shut the fuck up and listen.
Hey. Well, hey, Tyler, thank you so much for being here on Producing While Asian, the podcast. I'm excited to get to know you because I only know you through social media. So welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Don Mike. I mean, we've been friends on social media throughout the whole quarantine.
I know. And I feel like we connected. I feel like we connected because of racism is a virus and unapologetically Asian. And so I saw you on there and we connected there. And so it's really nice to finally talk to you a year later. And so here we are. So let's just jump in. So tell me and everybody listening a little bit of history about yourself and kind of how you, or I guess where you sit in the entertainment community and your kind of connection to producing and all of that stuff.
Yeah, of course. Well, my name is Tyler Pong. I'm an actor originally and founder and owner of Kill the Pig Productions. So through my production company, I'm also a writer and a filmmaker. And that's what I've been doing with my production company since about 2011. I founded it in New York and I moved to LA pretty soon after founding my production company. I built it up a lot out here in Los Angeles with short films. And I have 2 short films on Amazon Prime right now, and some other short films that have gone to film festivals like LA Shorts Fest and Chelsea Film Festival and various other film festivals as well. So basically, yeah, I'm an actor who created his own opportunities by becoming a filmmaker and writer.
That's awesome. When you talk about that, I think what stands out to me the most is you talking about creating your own opportunities. My mentor, Reggie Cabico, said the same thing to me when I was just fresh out of college. He was like, as an Asian American man, specifically Filipino in our industry, you're going to find success if you really take on creating your own opportunities and really taking the bull by the horns and like making decisions about that, because solely depending upon others, it's going to pigeonhole you. So I really appreciate that you said that. And so talk to me a little bit about that experience in terms of creating your own opportunities. I would say before you even go into that, on the scale of 1 to producer, and this is a question I'm asking everybody, because there is no true one definition of what a producer is, because if you're a music producer, if you're a live event producer, theater producer, they're all different. So for you, on the scale of 1 to producer, where do you stand and why? And then tell me a little bit about your journey in creating your own opportunities.
That's a tough question. 1 to producer. I mean, like, I don't know. I have a lot of producer credits. I'll tell you that much. I've been in a lot of docuseries and reality TV as an associate and an assistant producer, both in the story department and as a producer in general. So yeah, when I become a producer, I take that role very seriously. So I guess on a scale from 1 to producer, when I'm a producer, I'm full tilt 100% producer. As I said before, I didn't get into the industry as a producer. Most producers started another part of the industry and just kind of get pulled into becoming a producer. Yeah, I started, as I said before, as an actor and a writer. And in order to create those opportunities for myself, I had to produce my own work. This came in the form of short films. And I will also say that the reason why I had to do that was because there weren't as many opportunities for mixed race actors out there. When I started, I'm from Canada originally, but being half Caucasian, half Asian, I don't identify with a lot of the things that they were bringing me in for. I had to write my own theater and write content that I thought was appropriate for me, that just wasn't a stereotype on one side of the fence or the other.
You're in film now. Did you start and think that you'd always be in theater, or did you make that decision to move over to the film community at a certain point? And kind of talk to us about that.
I always wanted to be in film, but when you get into acting in the beginning, especially for me coming from Canada, you start in high school, you start in theater, you do theater in high school. It's usually where, that's the most accessible for somebody who's starting acting at a young age. So even though my goal was to be, or is to be, in film, I started in theater in high school. And when I moved to New York, it's a very theater town. So I was doing theatrical productions, and I wrote 2 original plays that were produced off Broadway. That's kind of like where I started. I have a huge love for theater. When I started my production company, the first thing that I produced was a short film that I wrote and performed in. All the stuff that I do with my production company is film related. So that's definitely a lot of my passion now, living in Los Angeles. As my acting teacher said, all roads lead to Los Angeles eventually. So it's he was right, and I ended up on the West Coast.
So tell me about your short film, that kind of started it all, and kind of where's that leading you, and kind of how did that land you now with your work with the Asian American Film Lab?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my first short film that I produced with Kill the Pig Productions was Dreamer in Exile. That led to me producing 2 more higher quality, higher produced, higher budgeted short films. One of them was Leap, which screened at LA Shorts Fest, which is an Academy Award qualifying film festival. So we were incredibly honored to be included. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that was Club Rats. That was screened at LA Shorts Fest, which was my next short film. So I mixed them up, but they both have amazing accolades. Leap would have screened at the First Glance Film Festival, Los Angeles, which is another Los Angeles-based film festival. But yeah, we've done dozens of film festivals, so you'll have to forgive me if I mix any of them up. But yeah, those are really my passion. And I guess you asked what short films brought, or what film work brought me to the Asian American Film Lab. I think that was kind of where you were directing the question, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I started making films for the 72-hour shootout as part of the Asian American Film Lab, I was brought in by a friend of mine. I had no idea about the film lab, about what they did. But when I heard that it was an organization that was creating opportunities and was interested specifically in Asian American content, it intrigued me. And my friend who brought me in, I was on his team for 2 years as an actor. And then by the 3rd time he invited me to be part of the competition, he actually had a conflict, and he allowed me to take on the role of team leader and basically helm this project. And if you're not familiar with the 72-hour film shootout, it's a competition where you have to write, film, and edit a movie in 72 hours. So when in my first 2 years, when I'm just an actor, all I have to do is show up, know the dialogue or know whatever I'm supposed to do, and act it out. But when you're in charge of making a whole short film in 72 hours, there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of moments that allow you the opportunity to learn. So in my time leading the team, I learned so much about filmmaking, and that was a huge push in that direction to become a filmmaker, to be behind the lens. I mean, that's another thing that I will say to, which is very important for diversity and representation on camera. It's not about just the representation on camera. It's not a color by number scenario where you can put a Black person in here or an Asian person in here or whatever, and it becomes representation. It's not only that, it's about what kind of representation there is behind the camera, what kind of authentic stories are being told by authentic people. And I think that's a big part of representation that the mainstream doesn't hear a lot about. They might just think, oh, the movie Crazy Rich Asians came out, or Fresh Off the Boat came out. But you have to think more critically and think, well, who are the people behind the scenes making these decisions and making these movies happen? And are they just doing it to, you know, to quiet the voices who are demanding that they need to see the stuff? Or is there actual change happening from within? And I feel that that's a huge motivation in driving diverse filmmakers behind the lens and becoming producers and becoming writers and filmmakers. I'm a huge advocate for seeing diversity behind the lens as well.
Absolutely. And I think you hit something right on the nail, and it's the word authenticity. You know, there's a difference between a story that is just a story and a story that actually holds weight and resonates with people and resonates with our community, and also genuinely teaches people that aren't in our community what we're like and what, you know, what to expect. Not what to expect, but like, you know, what is genuinely us. So with your producer hat on, how do you determine, you know, what stories you want to tell? Like, how does your authenticity meter work in that sense, right? So like when you get a script, what tells you, okay, this is something I want to support, or maybe not this one?
That's a good question. And I think it's all case by case. You know, the work that I do produce is either work that I am behind creatively, or that somebody I believe in has brought to me and I believe in their message. For example, Club Rats was something that my wife co-wrote with another talented actress, and they both acted as producers on it as well. And I came in and helped as the executive producer. And the theme was date rape and everything to do with drugs at clubs and taking advantage of women. And the film itself is very much a revenge film. So it did get a lot of flack. There was a lot of like pushback from people who felt offended that women were fighting for their own rights, which is something weird that people are offended about. But, you know, at least if it's something that makes people think and it makes people have this reaction, not only does it allow this conversation as to whether, you know, some people accused us of, you know, playing up date rape culture, which, you know, I mean, the fact that it happens, you don't have to play it up, it happens. So the fact that we're bringing up this discussion and talking about it is, I guess, an accomplishment in and of itself. But, you know, you always have to, even if it is touchy material, yes, you have to approach it sensitively and with empathy, but you can't be afraid to tackle the subject. So, I mean, it is a case-by-case basis what I produce as a producer, but I always like to at least have some sort of social commentary and something that makes people think.
For sure. And I dealt with something similar to that, where I helped produce a play in New York about fraternity hazing and kind of that whole culture and what that does to college age students. And, you know, date rape is part of that. You know, it really was that, you know, my director, Stephen Cutts, was like, we need to approach this with respect and in a way that gets the message across, educates people, but you're not, you know, just like throwing the N-word around, you know, and like talking about, you know, violence against women willy-nilly. You know, it's still a very sensitive subject, even though hazing can come across as like a boys having a good time and being stupid kind of thing. You know, it still has a very serious undertone. So I completely understand the caution behind doing a piece that might be on a very sensitive subject like that. So that's very cool to hear about that experience.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
A dog will always find a stick. People will tell him, look, Fido, this won't work. But he will stupidly reply, this time will be different. That famous argument.
Hey, my name is Tyler Hampong, and you are listening to Producing While Asian.
So how do you find balance in your career as both an actor and a producer, because I know that, and I'll speak personally, it's hard sometimes to say like, or to have the actor hat on your head, but also be in the producer seat and vice versa. So like when you're an actor, do you ever find situations where you're like, oh my God, if I produce this, I would be way better? Or if you're in the producer's seat, you're like, oh my God, like I could act this better than that person. Have you ever run into that personal conflict before? Because I know I have.
Yeah, in various forms. I'm sure I have. Yeah, in like examples where I am wearing multiple hats, where I'm producing and acting, it gives me an appreciation for the roles that are more concrete. Because like when you're doing small projects that are like a lot, I've done a lot of small projects at home in the past year because of quarantine, and it's just me and my wife, doing everything because we're socially distanced. So in that regard, playing both the actor and the writer and the producer, it gives me much more respect for when I'm an actor on set and there's a producer and a director helping me and guiding me in that. I mean, do I ever think that I can do better than the other person? I mean, I try not to, because I know that everybody has different styles, and you can learn a lot from other people's styles. So I always try to keep an open mind that way. But it's funny that you asked that question, because coming from a place where you wear multiple hats, you often it gives you like a well-rounded perspective on set, and I always feel like it's much more beneficial to have that experience from behind the camera when you're in front of the camera, and vice versa. If an actor becomes a director or a producer, they're usually more empathetic to the actor, and the performance that they draw from the actor is usually more relaxed, more authentic, because they're being kind of handled by somebody who understands their process. So I'm always excited when there are people who are on set who have all those different kind of experiences to pull from.
Definitely. So in that vein, if you could have like a wish list, let's say like top 2 to 3, who would you love to see you and your production company kind of collaborate with? Or, who is your kind of like dream 1 or 2 people? And like, obviously, like, we're going to manifest that. So let's like talk about it out loud, and hopefully they're listening, and then maybe it'll happen. So talk to us about that. Cause I know like when I first started out, I had a lot of like dreams of people I wanted to work with, and they didn't all come true, but some of them did, and it was awesome. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess right off the bat, some of my big heroes are like Quentin Tarantino. I really also love a lot of the filmmakers that kind of come from this like indie sensibility, even though they make like big budget movies now. But like filmmakers like Werner Herzog or Robert Rodriguez, who came from a very indie background, but now he makes huge, big scale movies. But I myself, as a filmmaker, come from this do-it-yourself mentality. So whenever I see filmmakers who came from that background as well, I totally respect them. For example, Tim Burton, if you see some of his early student film work, it's amazing as well. And it's very crafty, and there's a lot of stuff that he created by taking it out of his imagination, and people who will make their vision come to life at all costs are the type of filmmakers that I admire. But I mean, that's only filmmakers. Like this question was open-ended, so it could be actors, it could be anybody. And if you open the floodgates to actors, there are so many amazing actors that would be worth working with. I don't even know if who right now who's coming up to mind is Stephen Yeun. He was on The Walking Dead, and he just did Minari, and I think he's a great young actor who's coming up. But other than that, I mean, who wouldn't want to work with like the legends like Meryl Streep or Al Pacino or Robert De Niro? or people like that. I mean, there are so
Yeah.
many names.
Nice. You know, it's so funny because Stephen Yoon is like blowing up right now. And so I subscribe to several publications. And so one day in my mailbox, I got like 4 things with Stephen Yoon's face on it. And I'm like, wow, whoever is his person, his PR person is like, they deserve all the money because like it was like 4 very different places. It was like GQ, New York Times, like New York Times Magazine, and like one other smaller publication. So, and I love that he's Korean American, and it's very cool. So, in your time so far in this industry, where would you say your inspiration for your work comes from? And that's a very big question, but like, are there in the AAPI sphere, are there things that you kind of hold as like iconic examples of where you either where your work kind of comes from or what you'd like to move toward, or kind of, it's very open-ended. So kind of what's your inspiration in our not bubble, but like in the AAPI sphere, like what has come before you that you draw motivation from?
That's I mean, that's a loaded question. I draw a lot of inspiration from the filmmakers
Right.
in my community, that like on a smaller scale than like the big people that I aspire to work with or be. I get a lot of inspiration from seeing independent filmmakers that I've worked with personally and seeing where they're bringing their next step to, people that I've collaborated with or competed against in the 72-hour shootout. I love, seeing up and coming AAPI filmmakers and actors and where they've gone since the shootout. Oh my goodness, it's such a hard question to what I draw inspiration from.
I know.
That's it. Like the
I mean, that's
the
a great
filmmakers
answer. Yeah,
that
awesome.
I have around me.
Yeah, of course. And I feel like there's a lot to be said about collective creative energy. It's like the people that I either, whether I book them or not, or just people that happen to be in my orbit, I always find value in different opinions and different points of view, and kind of finding success together. And just general support too, right? So, just mentioning people that are, people you've worked with before, seeing where they go. I think there's a lot to be said about just like mutual, genuine support of each other's work. I think producers get a kind of a bad rap of like, well, I need to be the top producer and I need to, produce better than this other producer. And it's when really you can't really measure, because producing is so fluid and so unpredictable that we don't really have a true scale of success. I would say, yeah, if you're making millions of dollars, obviously that's successful, but if no one likes you, is that really successful? I don't know. But being inspired by those around you is just as important as picking something from the past, right? So what kind of projects are you working on right now? Like kind of what has 2021 brought you, like, so to speak? Like where, what direction are you going in at this moment in time?
I am currently writing. I've used quarantine to bolster my writing portfolio. Spending all the time inside with my computer, might as well write a few pages. So I've been working on 3 half-hour comedic pilots and submitting them to festivals and competitions. My pilot for The Real McCoy, which is a wrestling-themed comedy, recently made it to semi-finalist in the diverse voices at We Screenplay, but it also made it to a semi-finalist at a festival that I can't divulge quite yet, but it's still in the running for finalists. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll hear more about that. With all those projects that I'm working on, the ultimate goal would be to find a literary agent to shop these around or shop them around myself, and get interest from these pilots in order for me to either become staffed on an existing show or to get these pilots made themselves. I mean, that would be the ultimate goal. As a producer writer, that's kind of what I've been working on for the past couple of months. That's been a little more internal than what we usually do in the industry. But, you know, being that it's been quarantine for a decent amount of time, you know, it has allowed people to search internally and to create from starting from within. So I am grateful that I've had time to do that. Other than that, projects that are coming up, I have another a web series that I'm working on. It's also, I guess, under wraps, so I can't talk too much about that. But I have a web series where
All good.
it's currently airing, but I'm a mysterious character whose identity is shrouded, so I can't throw it out there yet. But if you see me, if you see me, just let me know, and I would appreciate it.
Nice. So, just a selfish question. You can't say what network it's on either.
I can't.
Okay, no worries.
Probably not. I mean, like, I could probably, you know, I don't want to push it.
Yeah. All good. I don't want to tempt fate. I've seen that happen to other actors that I know that have accidentally said something on social and lost the job. And
Oh, no.
so it's so I will not push because I completely understand that. Don't want you to lose a paycheck, right? But the comedic pilots, that's really awesome. Do you say would you say your genre that you like to produce, like, or actually, do you fall into one genre of producing, or do you like kind of casting the net wide and kind of taking on all different kinds of genres in your film work?
I like all genres. I like drama and comedy. I would say that the through line for all of my films, whether they're drama or comedy, they're kind of like, there's a dark, dry, sarcastic through line. Even if it is whichever way it leans, there's always that dark, dry comedic through line. So I feel that comes from, well, if you look at the name of my production company, it's Kill the Pig Productions. And people often ask me, where does that name come from? And it's a reference to the Lord of the Flies, which is
I was going to ask you. I was like, is that where it comes from?
Yeah, exactly. You
awesome.
you would have been right. You would have been absolutely right. And it's all about chaos and the struggles in society between different classes and stuff. And I see the pig as like a metaphor for greed or the man or the institution, some sort of thing that is marginalizing people. So when I called my company Kill the Pig Productions, it was a way to make content that's against the grain, against the norm, that questions institutional kind of norms that society has come to accept. So that's the meaning behind my production company. I will also say that it's not only just a reference to Lord of the Flies, but my last name is Pong. So I definitely wanted a reference to pigs or ham or something in my production company.
That's awesome.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
and me, Christina Walter.
Every other week, we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Now, what did Daddy do? I mean, I figure that you wanted to kill yourself anyway. Those are your words, not mine. So why not take advantage of it? Why not blackmail your dad or something? Shoot. Oh, here we go. Sleep well. No, Mom died not knowing your dirty secrets.
Hey everybody, my name is Tyler Hampong and you're listening to Producing While Asian.
So my next question is it's going to feel like a job interview question. So I apologize for this in advance, but given that we are on the podcast Producing While Asian, and we're trying to kind of uplift people in our community in this year just because of just the trauma that we're going through, career and industry speaking, talk to us a little bit about any challenges you might have faced as a producer who's AAPI, and kind of in those challenges, talk a little bit about like what you learned and what kind of advice you would impart on other AAPI people that are hoping to go down the same paths as the two of us, in that sense. So it doesn't have to be like a crazy traumatic challenge, but like just something that our audience would kind of take value from in terms of like, oh, I didn't know that, or that's something to take note of and to keep an eye on in case they end up in a similar situation.
Something came to mind, which isn't exactly targeted specifically at AAPI, but more of a immigration thing, which I'm sure a lot of Asians in general who are immigrating to the States will have to deal with. I immigrated here from Canada. So even though, I sound like I'm from here, I'm an immigrant. I had to go through the entire process. And my advice to people who are going through that process is that it's very difficult. And even if you get access to the States, depending how you got your access, you might not even be able to work in the field that you're here to work in. Me, I got my immigration status on an O1 visa, which is an artist visa for, to be an artist here in the States. That being said, it doesn't have as much freedom as, say, a green card or citizenship has. So when I was here on an artist visa, there are still limitations with studios that you can work with. So even though I'm here as an actor, I at one point wasn't able to work with NBC or ABC or Fox or CBS. And those are all the big studios that you want to be working with. So I guess my caution to people who are starting in the industry, who are immigrants like myself, the first step isn't even the first step. There's a whole process that you need to be aware of before taking on that huge challenge of being able to work in the States. And that's one thing that I would caution people who are getting into the industry, who are from outside the industry. As far as people who are, local, who are in the States and, they're perfectly legal to work and they want to jump in the industry and, they don't know where to start. I would say start with filmmaking competitions, make movies on the weekend with your phone, with your friends. I mean, there's no excuse not to make movies. People are making movies on TikTok like 3 times a day. So I mean, there's no reason not to make movies these days and like
TikTok
get the
musicals.
Content out there. Yeah, exactly. And like, there's no reason to hold on to your ideas and like hold on to them like they're precious little ideas that you can't give out to the world. If you have an idea, share it, and there's no reason why it can't get better over time if you work on it by sharing it with the world. You're not just going to hold on to that one idea and then only focus on that one idea and hide it from the rest of the world, and then one day 20 years later it'll emerge and be the opus of your career. You have to build up to that. So I would say don't be too precious with your intellectual property. Get it out there, because ideas are a dime a dozen. If I was precious about my pilot about wrestling and I'm like, no, I don't want people to read it because somebody might make a wrestling pilot. Well, I mean, sorry to burst your bubble, but there's already like dozens of wrestling pilots that are unproduced and some that are on the air right now. I mean, Glow was a TV show. There's another show called Heels, which is coming out on Stars, which is all about wrestling. And the WWE network, has all sorts of original content based on their original characters. So, I mean, intellectual property, as I said, is a dime a dozen. Don't be too precious about it, because there's somebody who's probably writing a script that's the same exact script, just done a little bit differently. And it's not that they're stealing your ideas. It's just part of this public consciousness where people draw from the same inspirations in everyday life. There's a reason why 2 Snow White movies came out at the same time, and why 2 Capote movies came out at the same time, and why this year Trial of Chicago 7 has Fred Hampton as a character in it, who was the leader of the Black Panthers. And then there's also a Black Panthers movie with Fred Hampton played by Kaluuya. I mean, I would say don't be too precious with your intellectual property. If anything, make as much as you can, and someday you'll eventually get noticed.
I agree, because if we all held on to our stuff like that, there wouldn't be 5,000 cop shows happening at once. Like there wouldn't be like 20 brands of Law and Order happening at the same time, and different hospital shows. It's like I could spend an afternoon going from channel to channel to channel watching different medical stories, and it's fine, because at the end of the day, I see it as more jobs, more opportunities, because I feel like as producers too, you almost have a bigger hand in creating the job economy in the entertainment industry, because you're allowing yourself to support a project that will employ people. And I think a lot of folks don't really understand that. Sometimes they think a producer is somebody who just like calls shots and says yes or no, and ends up in hot water if they spend too much money on something, but it's really about having the wherewithal to want to be A, really organized, and B, organized enough to raise money to then hire people. And we wouldn't have most of our industry if producers didn't do what they do, which is mainly raise money, pick material that's worth putting out there, and supporting it. And so basically I agree, like let's not hold on to our work so tightly that we don't ever share it, and then 20 years goes by and you're like, yeah, this one random story about my dog would be successful right now. So is there anything else that you want to kind of impart upon the Producing Well Asian audience that I might not have asked you about, or any experiences you want to share that you think would be valuable to share here? Because it's an open space, so I'm game for it.
Yeah, I mean, like, as far as the advice that I had given, it's completely my own experience and my own perspective. So I'm not I'm not saying there's a right or wrong as to how to produce. Everybody does it a completely different way. So I would say, you take what you can from what I just said, but also, take it with a grain of salt and use your own judgment, because being a producer is one of the jobs where people can't define what it is, because there's so many layers to what a producer does. It's not just, for some people, it's just raising money, but some producers don't raise money at all. That's not even on their radar of things to do. So there are various ways that you can be a producer, and it doesn't always have to be financial. And I would just say, go out there and start creating. Don't hold on to your intellectual property. Get it out there, because that's how you're going to get noticed.
Definitely. I think one of my goals too on the show is to get people to reach out to each other. So how can somebody who's listening to this episode reach out to you or your production company, or collaborate with you, or send a script your way? Like, how can they get access to your inbox, essentially? Like, how can they reach out? How can they follow you and keep on top of your work?
Yeah, they can find me very easily on Instagram and Twitter. My handle is @TylerHamPong, just my name, simple enough. You can find me at www.tylerhampong.com, and my production company is www.killthepigproductions.com, and our Instagram is @KTP Productions. I had to shorten it a little bit because I don't think they would let us use the word kill. I tried to do @KillThePig Productions. It didn't work. They didn't let it happen. So I had to do @KTP Productions for my production company.
Well, that's fair. I'm trying to keep with the no violence theme on social media lately, and just in general, I would say. So, Well, I really appreciate your time today, and I do hope to have you on again soon. So please stay in touch with us. Let us know if you have any other projects, in the future, and we'd love to have you back as a regular guest. So we'll be watching and we'll be following, and definitely we'll see you again in the future.
Thank you so much. I'll be watching all your podcasts too. I really appreciate being on the show. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Producing While Asian podcast. Our theme song was created by Luckstock. We are produced by Press Play Podcasts, and the show is edited by Michael Santos Sandoval. If you have a moment, please leave a review and a rating, and be sure to send us any topic ideas you have to producingwhileasian@gmail.com. To follow us, stay updated, and read our blog, visit www.producingwhileasian.com. We hope you join us again soon.